There is a kind of power that doesn't shout, a kind that doesn't fight to be seen, or heard, or understood. It just is, present, patient, still. And yet, it moves mountains, commands respect, draws people closer, or keeps them at a distance without ever lifting a finger. That power is silence. In a world drunk on noise, distraction, and endless self-expression, choosing not to speak, choosing to observe, to withhold, to wait, has become a lost art. But those who rediscover it, they possess a strength that many will never understand, and most will never defeat. This is simply Stoicism, where we dive deep into the ancient truths that shaped civilizations and can still shape you. If you're on a journey to master yourself, especially in your relationships, your emotions, and your sense of purpose, you're in the right place. So, take a breath, let the world slow down around you. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to hear the kind of wisdom that doesn't just entertain, it transforms. And click like if you believe that silence may just be your next great teacher. Let's begin. 1. Choose silence deliberately. Silence is not the absence of words. It is the presence of control. The ancient Stoics understood this well. To them, mastery over the self began with mastery over speech. Words, after all, are powerful tools. But like any tool, their value is diminished when used carelessly or constantly. When every thought is spoken, when every emotion demands expression, we become slaves to our impulses. But when we learn to hold our tongue, even when our pride screams otherwise, that's when something shifts. There is a moment, a very precise moment, in every heated exchange, every relationship struggle, every professional setback, where a lesser man explodes and a stronger one waits. That moment is the battleground, and silence is his shield. Choosing silence is not about repression. It's not about avoidance or emotional cowardice. It's about being intentional. It's about seeing 10 steps ahead in the conversation and realizing that nothing you say right now will serve you better than your restraint. Think about how often words have made things worse. How often clarity was ruined by your need to explain, justify, defend, or retaliate. How many arguments became wars because you had to have the last word. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Let that settle in. You don't owe anyone a reaction. You don't have to respond. Not now. Not ever. If the moment doesn't merit it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to simply not respond. When you choose silence, not out of fear, but from a place of grounded presence, it creates space. And in that space, clarity is born. You see things more clearly. You hear what's not being said. You give others the room to show you who they really are, without your interference, clouding the moment. Most people speak to be heard, but the Stoic speaks to be understood, and only when it is necessary. This isn't just philosophical. It's tactical, strategic. In arguments, silence throws people off. In relationships, it creates mystery. In business, it reveals who actually needs who more. You become unpredictable. You shift the dynamic. Because while everyone else is playing checkers with their mouths, you're playing chess with your presence. But this requires one thing: discipline. The temptation to speak, to fight back, to correct, to impress, it's always there. Especially when ego is involved. Especially when someone pokes at your insecurities or misinterprets your character. But if your silence is deliberate, if you can remain still while the storm rages, people start to feel something else: respect. Sometimes fear, and more often than not, curiosity. They begin to ask, what is he thinking? Why isn't he reacting? What does he know that I don't? And that's the magic. You've now introduced a new variable into the equation: your mystery. And mystery is power. There's also a kind of integrity in silence. It gives you time to align your thoughts with your values. It gives you time to ask, is what I'm about to say wise, or is it just emotional discharge? Silence becomes a filter, and through it, your words, when you do speak, carry more weight. People listen more, because they know you're not just talking to talk. In a relationship, this can be transformational. When tensions rise, when the conversation grows hostile or manipulative, your ability to step back, to breathe, instead of break, it teaches your partner something. It says, I am not reactive, I am responsible, and I won't contribute to chaos. And this doesn't mean you're emotionally detached. It means you're emotionally sovereign. And believe me, that's attractive. That's inspiring. That's rare. So here's what I want you to reflect on. And here's your invitation to engage with this wisdom, to take it from theory to practice. Think back to a moment in your life where your silence would have served you better than your words. Maybe it was a fight with someone you loved. Maybe it was a moment of criticism where you got defensive. Maybe it was a time you overshared and later regretted it. What would have changed if you had chosen silence? Drop it in the comments. Let this be a space for self-awareness, not shame. And if you're committed to making silence your ally instead of your enemy, write this down as your public affirmation. I speak when wisdom guides me. I am not a slave to reaction. Let's keep going. 2. Dictate the pace of interaction. In every interaction, whether personal, professional, or romantic, someone is setting the tempo. Someone is leading the dance, even if subtly. And most people, they let others set it for them. They respond instantly to messages. They speak quickly to fill silence. They rush to clarify, to explain, to apologize. They operate on the emotional tempo set by someone else, but not you. Not if you want to embody true Stoic strength. You must understand this. Your silence isn't just passive, it's directive. It influences, it molds. It shapes the rhythm of an entire interaction, without you having to move a muscle. The man who controls the tempo controls the tone, the outcome, and the impression he leaves. Now imagine a conversation, a disagreement, maybe even a confrontation. Most people feel this pressure to respond quickly, to keep the ball rolling, to keep the exchange alive. But what happens when you don't respond immediately? When you pause, when you allow silence to sit between sentences like a cold stone on the table, you shift everything. You break the unconscious rhythm. You make others wait, and in that waiting their mind races. They question themselves. They anticipate your reaction. They project. And that projection, that's power. Power you command without a word. There's an old tactic in negotiation used by high-level operators. Silence. Just wait. Make the other party fill the void. People hate silence. They rush to end it. And in doing so, they reveal their insecurities, their boundaries, their true motivations. In love, in business, in conflict, silence reveals more than pressure ever could. The Stoics were masters at this. Not by manipulation, but by calm control. They knew that the man who speaks less often speaks last. And when he does, it's definitive. Think of Marcus Aurelius, an emperor surrounded by advisors, generals, politicians. every one of them eager to speak. But when he listened, and he did so deeply, and then responded with stillness behind his words, they all listened. That's what silence buys you. Authority. Now, how does this apply to your daily life? It's simple. When someone texts you with urgency, you don't have to respond on their schedule. When a partner escalates emotionally, you don't have to match their pace. When a coworker gets reactive, you can slow things down with your tone, your breath, and yes, your silence. This is not about superiority, it's about sovereignty. You are not owned by the tempo of others. You choose your pace. You walk through fire without rushing. You move through tension like it's mist. And in doing so, you start to realize silence is not just absence. It's presence. Your presence. Have you ever noticed how certain people make a room quieter just by walking in? Not because they're intimidating, but because they carry themselves slowly, deliberately, without the frantic energy most people throw around like sparks. That's what silence internalized looks like. It's felt before it's heard. One final note: silence doesn't mean emotional suppression. It means measured presence. You're there, fully, but you're not rushed. You're not reactive. You're not trying to prove or perform. You're just being, and in that stillness, you influence everyone else without them even realizing why. So remember this: the one who sets the pace sets the tone, and the one who controls the tone controls the outcome. Let's move forward. 3. Act. Don't emote. Modern culture worships expression. Social media rewards you for broadcasting every thought, every feeling, every reaction. Say how you feel. Speak your truth. Get it off your chest. That's the mantra of our time. And while honesty has its place, the Stoic sees something dangerous in the glorification of constant emotional exposure. Because the more you express your emotions compulsively, the less you own them. Silence gives you the space to feel deeply without becoming enslaved by that feeling. It teaches you that not every emotional impulse is a call to action. Most are just weather, storms passing through, and reacting to every breeze like it's a hurricane. That's no way to live or lead. Here's the key. The Stoic doesn't deny his emotions. He masters them by refusing to let them hijack his behavior. You may feel anger. Fine. Let it rise. Observe it. Sit in silence. Don't speak. Don't act. Just watch. Let the silence absorb it. And then decide how to move. Deliberately, without the emotion leading the way. That's what separates the reactive from the resilient. The man who acts from impulse, and the man who acts from principle. Most people explode when they're hurt. Most people lash out when they're afraid. But the Stoic breathes, waits, and lets his values, not his pain, choose his response. This applies everywhere. When someone insults you, you don't need to defend yourself. Your silence is already your defense. When your partner disappoints you, you don't need to launch into accusations. Sit with the feeling, then respond with clarity, with intent, and sometimes with distance, and sometimes with nothing. One of the most powerful moves you can make in life is to feel something intensely and still choose your behavior based on reason. That's freedom. That's maturity. That's strength. Not being cold, but being unshakable. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And sometimes the best reaction is not, because silence buys you time. Time to assess. Time to detach from the emotional pull of the moment, and time to prepare your action, not your outburst. Consider this. When was the last time you regret saying too little? Compare that to how often you've regretted saying too much. Exactly. Your power lies in restraint, in quiet control, in the energy you conserve when others are exhausting themselves emotionally. In relationships, this makes you a rock, dependable, unshakable, and strangely magnetic. People begin to feel that you're not easily pulled or swayed, that you don't need to express everything to be real, that your silence carries more than their words ever could. Now, this is not easy, especially if you were raised to believe that love equals constant expression, or that anger needs to be released or it will destroy you. But here's the truth. Unexamined expression is just emotional pollution, and the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more stillness, more depth. So make this vow, publicly. In the comments, if you're ready to step into a new level of power. I do not let my emotions decide my actions. I move from principle, not impulse. Or tell us about a time where you did act impulsively, and what you learned from it. Let this space be a reflection pool, not a performance stage. Now let's continue. Your silence is only getting stronger. 4. Let your absence resonate. There's a silence that enters a room when you leave it. A presence that lingers long after your footsteps have faded. If you have lived with intention, if you have cultivated restraint, if you have walked through life grounded in principle, then your absence will begin to speak as loudly as your presence once did. And in this world of constant access, instant messaging, always online hyper-availability, absence has become rare, unsettling, powerful. We are trained, socially and psychologically, to seek reassurance through presence. We text back immediately. We stay available just in case. We linger in conversations that drain us because we're afraid of what silence might suggest. That maybe we don't care. That maybe we're rude. That maybe something's wrong. But here's what the Stoic knows, and what every man must eventually learn if he wants to reclaim his power. Your absence is a message. Your silence is a statement. And your withdrawal can echo louder than any declaration you could ever make. Sometimes when words fail, your disappearance is the only sentence that matters. This doesn't mean abandoning people or ghosting as a form of punishment. It means stepping away from what no longer serves your peace, your purpose, or your principles, without needing to explain yourself. Because often, the need to explain is a need to be understood, and needing to be understood by everyone is weakness disguised as diplomacy. You must reach a point where you can say to yourself, "They don't have to understand. I understand, and that's enough." In romantic relationships, this becomes especially potent. If someone has taken you for granted, if they've grown used to your presence as a background noise, rather than a chosen gift, then your absence becomes the wake-up call. It's the quiet that finally makes them hear what they were too distracted to notice before. People often ignore presence, but they study absence. They dissect it. They project onto it. They wonder what it means. They wonder if it's permanent. They wonder what they did or didn't do to invite it. And while you're gone, they come face to face with themselves. But this only works if your silence isn't performative. If it isn't a game or a manipulation or a desperate cry for attention. It only works when your absence comes from integrity, from peace, from knowing that your value is not up for negotiation. The Stoic does not storm out. He does not slam the door. He simply leaves, quietly, without malice, without drama. And because he leaves without demanding to be followed, The echo he leaves behind becomes unbearable for those who lived off his presence without appreciating it. This applies beyond romance. In friendships, in workplaces, in families. There comes a time when your continued presence is enabling dysfunction, when you become complicit in the very chaos you wish to transcend. And in those moments, silence is not just strength, it's salvation. And yes, people may criticize you for it. They may accuse you of emotional distance, of being cold, of being arrogant. Let them. That's the cost of self-respect, and it is a small price to pay for the clarity that silence will bring you. You don't owe anyone your constant availability. You owe yourself your alignment. And sometimes silence, long intentional silence, is the only way to return to that alignment. Think about the men who left legacies behind. Think of warriors, thinkers, philosophers who walked away from power, from glory, from attention. Their silence was not an absence of fire. It was its containment, its conservation. And in many cases, their absence said more than their words ever could. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, to stay out of guilt, to keep showing up out of obligation rather than truth, remember this. Sometimes you don't need to argue. You don't need to beg. You don't need to correct anyone's misunderstanding of you. You just leave and let the silence do the talking. 5. Allow them to interpret your silence. There is a unique psychological power in being unreadable. When you speak less, when you resist the impulse to explain, clarify, or defend, you hand people a mirror, not a map. You give them silence, and in that silence they pour in their own meaning, their own fears, their own hopes, their own projections. And the beauty of it all is, you don't have to do a thing. Silence, when cultivated with purpose, becomes a space that others feel compelled to fill. And when they do, they reveal themselves, often more than they ever intended to. The need to interpret your silence is a symptom of your impact. This is not about manipulation. It's about maturity. Most people are terrified of ambiguity. They want closure, clarity, answers. But the Stoic man, he is comfortable being unknown, misunderstood, unfinished, because he does not rely on others to confirm who he is. He is not desperate to be read correctly. He is sovereign in silence. Now consider this dynamic in relationships. Let's say you choose not to respond to provocation. You don't insult back. You don't defend yourself. You don't correct their assumptions. You simply pause. Maybe you go quiet for a while. Maybe you disappear for a few days. What happens? Their mind begins to work overtime. They remember everything you've said in the past. They look for clues. They replay old conversations. They imagine what you're thinking. And most of the time, they think it's about them, because your silence becomes a blank canvas. And what they paint onto it reveals more about them than about you. You may think, but isn't that dangerous? Won't they misunderstand me? Yes. They might. And that's okay. You don't need to control every perception. What matters is that you're intentional, that your silence is aligned with your values, not with the outcome. The great Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks badly of you and it's true, correct yourself. If it's false, laugh." You could also stay silent. Let the falsehood echo into emptiness. Let them wrestle with the vacuum. If someone can't handle your silence, they'll never handle your depth. In the silence, people reveal their insecurity, their assumptions, their trust in you, or lack thereof, their need for control, their capacity for patience. You don't have to test people. But your silence often becomes a test they administer to themselves. In friendships, this reveals who respects your boundaries and who takes you for granted. In business, it reveals who panics under pressure and who trusts your process. In romance, it reveals who loves you for your presence and who only loves what you provide. But here's the trap to avoid. Don't use silence as a weapon. Use it as a mirror. Your goal is not to hurt or confuse, but to create space, to allow others to reflect, to see what rises when the noise stops. If they can't sit in that silence with you, or worse, if they fill it with negativity, it tells you something about the relationship itself. Silence then becomes a compass, not away from others but toward truth. And sometimes, they'll come to you. They'll ask, "Why did you go quiet?" Don't rush to answer. Let them feel the question. Let them live in it. And if you choose to speak, let your words be few and full of meaning. Let them know you're not reacting. You're choosing. And that choice came from depth, not from drama. So here's what I want you to share today. In your life, when has your silence been misinterpreted? Did it hurt the relationship or reveal the truth of it? Or did it eventually make your presence more valuable when you returned? Or if you're ready to commit to holding space and letting others interpret your silence without chasing their approval, write this in the comments as your affirmation. I do not chase understanding. I let silence reveal the truth. Your silence isn't confusion, it's clarity. It's not absence, it's revelation. Let's keep going. 6. Your calm energy speaks volumes. There's a quiet language that every human being understands, one that doesn't need translation, grammar, or volume. It is the language of energy, the force you bring into a room before you speak, the weight you carry in your body, your breath, your gaze. And the greatest irony, those who carry the most true power are often those who speak the least. They don't need to raise their voice. They don't need to tell you they're in control. They don't posture. They don't preach. They simply exist in a state of silent gravity. The Stoics believed that everything external is unstable, that what matters most is what resides within. And when a man has done the hard work, the inner alchemy of transforming reactivity into resilience, chaos into composure, noise into presence, then he becomes a walking fortress. His energy doesn't scream, it radiates. Calm energy is not passive. It's not sleepy. It's not indifferent. It's poised. It's the kind of strength that doesn't have to compete because it's already whole. It doesn't need validation because it moves from principle, not approval. Think about someone you've met who didn't rush to speak. Someone who looked you in the eye not with aggression, but with unwavering steadiness. Someone who stood tall, breathed slowly, answered sparingly. That person left an impression. Why? Because in a world dominated by frantic, nervous energy, people who possess calm are instantly memorable. They don't blend in, they anchor the room. Now understand this. Calm doesn't come from suppressing emotion. That's merely a performance. Real calm is the result of deep inner order. It comes from knowing that nothing outside of you can touch what's essential within. That whatever happens, you will remain grounded in what you stand for. That you have trained yourself not to be dragged by every disturbance, every insult, every shift in external circumstances. And this calm, it communicates loudly. When you're calm in conflict, it tells the other person, "You cannot provoke me. I don't dance to your rhythm." When you're calm under pressure, it tells the room, "I trust myself. I do not panic." When you're calm in love, it tells your partner, I am not here to control or chase. I am here to meet you in truth or to walk away with grace. And this isn't something you fake. It's something you become. Through discipline, through silence, through solitude, through repeated decisions not to react, not to flinch, not to rush. It's a strength forged quietly. In the hours no one sees, your calm presence becomes your reputation. People may not remember every word you say, but they'll remember how they felt in your presence. Did they feel rushed, judged, confused? Or did they feel stable, invited, safe? And perhaps more importantly, did they feel that you were safe within yourself? Calmness doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't collapse under feeling. It means you can hold space for discomfort, yours and others, without trying to escape it. And that is incredibly rare. The ancient Stoics didn't talk about energy the way modern language does, but they understood the concept deeply. They called it apatheia, not to be confused with apathy. Apatheia meant being undisturbed by passions, not lifeless, but centered, fully alive, yet unmoved by the chaos of the world. Today, you must reclaim that. Because the world will bait you with urgency. It will provoke you with headlines, with algorithms, with people who confuse chaos for passion. Your power lies in your refusal to be swept up, and this takes time. You must observe yourself. Where do you rush? Where do you raise your voice? Where do you abandon your stillness for the illusion of control? Correct it, gently, patiently. Forgive yourself when you fall, but aim always toward presence, toward grounded, embodied calm, because the quieter you become, truly, the more others will lean in, not to hear your words, but to feel your energy, and that says everything. 7. Preserve peace over pride. Let us now speak of pride, that ancient force, that invisible fire, that need to be right, seen, validated, victorious. Pride is seductive. It wraps itself in the language of dignity. It whispers that to walk away is weakness, that to stay silent is to lose, that if someone disrespects you, you must respond, and you must win. But here's what pride doesn't tell you. That every time you speak just to defend your ego, you chip away at your peace. The Stoic does not destroy his stillness to prove a point. He does not sacrifice his inner clarity for temporary dominance. He does not trade peace for pride. And this takes enormous strength, because pride wants to speak. It loves the sound of its own defense. It wants to make sure everyone knows you were right, that you were noble, that you didn't deserve the disrespect. But peace is quiet. It doesn't need to be understood. It doesn't need applause. It just needs space to exist. Now listen carefully, because this is one of the hardest truths you'll ever accept. There is more power in walking away with your peace intact than in staying to win a battle that doesn't matter. Consider a real-life scenario. Someone insults you publicly. You could respond. You could outwit them, outshame them, strike back with sharpness and precision. And maybe you win. Maybe the room applauds. But afterward, in your silence, do you feel clean? Do you feel free? Or do you feel stained by the energy of it all? Because most victories won through pride leave a residue. They disturb your inner order. They drain you. Now contrast that with the man who simply smiles or says nothing at all and walks away. Not because he's defeated, but because he values his internal state more than the scoreboard. He knows that peace is the real prize, and that every time you defend your pride at the cost of your peace, you've already lost. Pride is reactive. Peace is intentional. And yes, sometimes you'll be misunderstood. Sometimes silence will look like weakness. Let it. Sometimes people will say, "He didn't even fight back." Let them say it. Because the deeper truth, the one only the wise see, is that walking away in silence with dignity is not surrender. It's transcendence. In relationships, this becomes even more urgent. How many arguments with your partner, your family, your friends have been fueled not by real disagreement, but by the inability to let go of pride? You had to be right. They had to admit they were wrong. You had to have the last word. You needed closure, validation, acknowledgement. And in that war of egos, love quietly slipped out the back door. Preserving peace doesn't mean you allow disrespect. It means you deal with it like a mountain deals with the wind, unmoved, grounded, towering above petty provocations. You hold your boundary, and when needed, you withdraw. But not in anger, in wisdom. The Roman philosopher Seneca said, "He who does not prevent a wrong when he can, encourages it." That includes wrongs against your own peace. You must guard it. You must prioritize it. You must see your peace as sacred, not to be given away just because someone threatens your image. And here's the beautiful twist. When you make peace more valuable than pride, you often gain something even more powerful: respect. Maybe not right away, maybe not from everyone, but from the kind of people you actually want in your life. Those who can see the restraint, the grace, the quiet power of a man who doesn't flinch. So here's your reflection prompt, your way to anchor this principle into your life. Tell us in the comments about a time you protected your peace by walking away from conflict. Or share a time when pride got the better of you and what you learned from it. Let this be a place of honest learning, not perfection. Or if you're committing now to prioritize peace over pride, write this in the comments as your public vow. My peace is sacred. I do not trade it for pride. Let's continue. The next form of silence is even more powerful. 8. Withdraw quietly. There is a certain kind of man who vanishes not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. He doesn't make announcements. He doesn't issue ultimatums. He doesn't ask for applause. He simply leaves. No noise, no explanation, no ceremony. He withdraws, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. And that silence shakes the world behind him. This is the final expression of silence as a superpower, the quiet withdrawal. There comes a point in your growth, and if you are walking the Stoic path, that point will come more than once, where the only thing left to do is exit. Not because you've lost, not because you didn't try, but because you've seen all you needed to see, said all that needed to be said, and realized that silence is now the only honest response left. The Stoics weren't obsessed with confrontation. They didn't pride themselves on being the loudest voices in the forum. They chose where to invest their energy, and more importantly, where not to. They believed in ataraxia, inner stillness, and anything that compromised that, whether it was a toxic conversation, a manipulative relationship, or a constant tug-of-war of egos, it was to be left behind quietly.
Now this is difficult, because modern culture equates silence with submission. It tells you that if you don't respond, you've lost. If you don't explain, you've failed. If you don't explain, you've failed. If you don't fight, you're weak.
But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The strongest move is sometimes the most subtle. It's the clean break, the unannounced exit, the final silence that says, I know my worth, and I no longer need to remind you of it. There's a kind of nobility in that. To walk away without slamming doors, to choose your dignity over dramatics, to resist the need to be understood one last time, because often that final explanation is a trap. It's the last gasp of your ego, asking to be seen. But if you've truly reached the point of withdrawal, if you've decided to preserve your energy, protect your peace, and return to the stillness you've been cultivating, then don't look back. Leave quietly, and let your absence complete the conversation that words could never finish. This form of silence carries enormous weight. It teaches people more than your presence ever did, because they now feel the absence of your stability, of your groundedness, of your patience, and they are left with only their own noise, their own games, their own mess, without you to absorb it. Now, some people may come back, seeking closure. They may say, "Why did you disappear?" Or "You could have just said something." But you don't owe everyone an epilogue. If the story was written with enough clarity, your silence is the final punctuation. And if they didn't read the story while you were present, they won't understand the ending either. In relationships, this kind of withdrawal is essential, especially when staying means slowly dissolving yourself for the sake of false peace. When conversations go in circles, when every attempt at clarity is met with distortion, when your presence is no longer being honored, that is not a sign to fight harder. It's a sign to vanish with grace. In business, in family dynamics, even in digital spaces, your silent exit becomes a kind of sacred rebellion, a refusal to be drawn into battles that lead nowhere, a boundary that requires no words, only motion. The Stoic does not crave the last word. He craves the last peaceful breath, the one that comes when he walks away, whole and unshaken. So here's what I want you to consider. Where in your life have you stayed too long? In which situations, relationships, or patterns have you allowed your energy to be siphoned by noise, when what you truly needed was stillness? And if you've ever made a clean, quiet exit, share that moment. What did it feel like to finally leave? How did your silence reshape the space you left behind? Or if you're ready to commit now to the path of dignified withdrawal, to choose quiet exits over loud arguments, leave this in the comments as your final vow. I leave with peace, not pride. My silence speaks what words never could. Let us now enter the silence, one last time. Conclusion. And now, we've come to the stillness at the end. We've walked together through the many forms of silence. The discipline to withhold speech, the power to set the tempo, the mastery of action over emotion, the echo of absence, the mystery of being unreadable, the calm that radiates through presence, the wisdom of peace over pride, and finally, the quiet, dignified withdrawal. This is what silence looks like, when you no longer see it as weakness, but as willpower in its highest form. Silence is no longer a void. It is a force. It is not passive. It is active. It does not hide your truth. It amplifies it for those with ears to hear. You've been taught that silence is submission. But now you know, silence is strategy. It's sovereignty. It's freedom from the chaos of the world and from the chaos within yourself. And if this resonated with you, if something stirred in you today, then I invite you to take this further. Subscribe to the channel. This is not noise. This is not trend. This is not content for content's sake. This is a discipline, a refuge, a reclamation of power. Click like, if you're walking this path. If you're done with reactive living, if you're building the kind of presence that doesn't need to shout, because it already commands the room with stillness alone. And if you know someone who needs this message, who is always caught in the noise, the reactions, the need to be heard, send this to them. Be the reason they remember how powerful their silence truly is. And above all, stay still, stay grounded, and stay sovereign. This has been Simply Stoicism. I'll see you quietly in the next one.